Hi guys, welcome to Basement Supercar Build, the channel where we see if an average guy like me can design and build his own mid-engine car. This video will be a highlights video of the work that was finished this week. If you want to see the actual work take place, watch the full-length video for this week. And with that out of the way, let's get started on this week's video.
Well, after taking a few days off from working on the car because I was waiting on parts to come in, finally some parts have arrived, and we see here we have the metal. There's two pieces, but it's all the metal I need to finish mounting the radiators. And I have the two air conditioner condensers that I'm still working on figuring out how I'm going to mount those. I have a couple of different options I can do, but I need to finish these radiator mounts first, and then I'll make a decision on those. And also had a big package arrive today. The Radiator Transaxle came in. I'll show you what this looks like. This Transaxle is made as this is the input shaft from the engine, and this is an output shaft. Oh, I can't get that off. To a drive shaft that goes to the front wheels for an all-wheel drive car. We will not be using that. We are just rear-wheel drive, but we have to make some modifications to the oil pan for that shaft to sit in, or a void area for it to ride in. That's what the Transaxle looks like. And this also came with it. It's a starter, let's see, slave cylinder for the clutch, the adapter plate here to mount it to the LS engine, and a box full of goodies that I haven't quite opened yet. We're still waiting on the clutch. It takes a custom spec clutch for the 800 horsepower engine, and the clutch and flywheel and all assembly will come in together. And the only thing that we don't have are axles, and I will order the axles once the Transaxle is mounted in the car, so I can get an exact length measurement to provide to the actual manufacturer. But this will give us some stuff to work on for several days in the future, and let's get started on making these radiator mounts and finishing those up. I want to show you guys this. The radiator mounts are finished, and I've started playing with the air conditioner condenser, just trying to get an idea where it's going to locate and how it's going to sit. Not quite sure how I'm going to do that yet. I need to do a little more research before I make the mounts for that. But let's look at the mounts here for the radiators. I went with a pretty beefy angle here up front and left the end over here long, and I've done that because the front end of the car here, the fender at the bottom in front of the front tire, will attach to this somewhere, so I can cut this off and weld an attached bracket or a mount here later. But I wanted to leave it long just in case. This is really rigid. It takes a lot of force to move it at all, and that's even without the gusset that I was thinking about doing here in the back. So right now I'm not sure it needs this gusset. This is really strong, and I'm going to hold off. I have the metal here in case I decide to do it in the future. But at this point, once this attaches out here at the end on the front of the car, I'm thinking that may be strong enough. But if it's not, then we'll come back and add a gusset. But we'll leave it here for now. And I have both radiator mounts done. This one's also sticking out beyond the tire. And once I figure out where I'm going to locate these condensers, for sure I'll make a mount that comes up here and attaches these two and goes back and either bolts or welds onto this bottom radiator mount bracket. A lot of work to do up here, but before I move on with that, I want to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. So until I know what I'm doing there, I think we're going to come back here and start working on mounting the Transaxle to the engine. This is the adapter plate, and these are mounting locations here on both sides that bolt to the frame. And because of the thickness of the material around this, I'm hitting the top of this tube, the 2x4 tube, and the inside of this. So right now I'm thinking I have the engine slid too far backwards, I believe. I think the axles will clear this tube with no problem. So I need to figure out exactly where this needs to locate, front to back and up and down. But I think that's the next thing we're going to do, try to figure out the exact engine location, and so I can make new engine mounts and start working on mounting this transaxle to the engine. And once it's in, I'll have to make some kind of mounts here to pick up this hole and weld onto the frame. And then there's also some pickups back here to rear I'll have to weld in to attach the rear of the transaxle. There are mounting points back there also. But I guess let's get started on this. As we close out this week's video, I've got a few things I want to show you. I went into a couple of auto parts stores today and ravaged through their radiator hoses until I found some that I thought would work for me here. And I have found 3 out of the 4 I need that I believe I can make work. And you can see the 2 here. One of them is coming up and connecting to a cross tube going to the other radiator on the other side. This is supply from the engine, which will come in here and connect to this 1.25" pipe here. The supply line will run across. It'll be connected to this front aluminum pieces with 2 8L clamps, and then comes over out of that tube and up here to the top. So the only radiator line that I'm missing is the one from the bottom of this radiator to come back over and connect to this top tube to go back to the engine. So hopefully another trip or 2 to the hardware store and I can find that last one. I'll have all 4 hoses that I need, and then I can document those numbers so I'll have them for future reference. Let's see. This adapter plate to adapt this transaxle to the engine, I have it stuck here on the transaxle, and you can see how far this shaft sticks out. It's about 1/2 inch. That's where I'm having to make a void area in the oil pan for clearance for that, and I have that done. And this is what it looks like. Just removed some area here for that shaft to sit and operate freely without any interference. And the only thing I had to modify other than doing this was this long bolt was just like this when it went all the way through the pan. I've had to take and get rid of the long bolt and go to a short bolt here, and that is the only modification here. And while I had the oil pan off, I drilled and tapped a hole here as high as I could get it on the oil pan for return oil from the 2 turbos. It just gravity feeds back down into the oil pan here. I've got a fitting ordered. It will be here. It's similar to this, but it just screws in. It has an AN fitting attached to it, and the oil from both turbos comes back down and dumps into the oil pan there, which that level is above any oil sitting in the pan, so it can freely pump in. But I have this oil pan torqued back on the engine to specs, and the engine is ready to put back into the car and start mating the transaxle to it and trying to figure out the exact location for the new engine mounts. And for the engine mounts, I'm going to keep this plate here where you can see it. It is large enough that these just need to shift forward a little bit, so I'll remove these off the engine mount. I'll reuse the mount itself, the rubbers, and this base plate, and just put a new piece in between. I have that tube ordered. It'll be here in a couple of days, and then we can start locating the engine to the new correct spot where this transaxle will operate correctly. And then once that engine mount is done, we can start attaching the transaxle and coming up with mounts for it. There are 4 mounts that'll have to be welded onto the frame here to support that transaxle, and I believe I have the materials either here or ordered to do all of that. So that's what we'll be doing next week's video, is trying to make new engine mounts and start mounting this transaxle, and I hope to see you guys again in 1 week.